Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So welcome, good evening. Welcome to Artist Talk on Art. I am Chennie Huang, current president of Artist Talk on Art. And before we start the program tonight, I'd like to make a brief introduction of ATOA. Founded in 1974, it has held and recorded over 1,200 events, audio and video, featuring more than 9,000 artists, art teachers, critics, curators, art writers, museum and gallery directors and staff. And you can learn more by visiting our website at atoanyc.org. All events are recorded.
Is this too loud for you, Stephen?
Um, all events are recorded. For previous recordings, please visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Legacy recordings are also available and can be found at Archive of American Art of the Smithsonian Institution. So tonight's panel helps celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Art Students League, an art school in the American Fine Arts Society in Manhattan, New York City, founded in 1875.
Wow.
The league also maintains a significant permanent collection of student and faculty work and publishes an online journal of writing on art-related topics. And tonight's event is organized by our board secretary, Jacqueline Sferra-Rada. Our panelists tonight include moderator Esther Moerdler, panelists Ksenia Nouril, I hope that's right, Ksenia, or Ksenia, Jillian Russo, Pamela Koob, and it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Esther Moerdler. And just a brief introduction, she is the curatorial assistant at the Art Student League of New York. In her career to date, she has worked across a variety of institutions in the art world, including museums, auction houses, galleries, and art tech startups. She holds a BA in art history and history from Barnard College of Columbia University and an MA in curating contemporary art from Royal College of Art in London. So Esther, where are you? Please take over.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm going to share my screen now. Thank you so much for that great introduction. Sorry, I'm having some issues. Apologies. I'm so sorry for this. I should have checked it before. It's having me quit and reopen. So let me hop back in for one moment. I apologize profusely.
No worries. That's fine.
Espanol by Edward Lalo. The first thing to come out of that French craze for all things Spanish 1 year before Bizet Carmen. That was the great Itzhak Perlman on violin with the Paris Orchestra and Daniel Barrett.
Thank you all so much for your patience. I apologize for that. Let me just, as I said, share our little PowerPoint here. My name is Esther Moerdler. I'm the curatorial assistant at the League, as was mentioned. I will give you a brief little history about the League. So we were founded, as they said, in 1875. A little flustered from the, we broke away from the National Academy of Art at that time. the students there, who you could see on the left of the screen, were unhappy with the ways that the National Academy is heading with its teaching. And so they decided to break away and create classes in the French Atelier style of teaching. They outgrew their studio spaces in Union Square and moved into its current home on 215 West 57th Street in 1892. The building was specially built as artist studios, and you could see it when you come visit today, just how intentional all the spaces are. It was built with a members lounge, with a gallery space, and with studio spaces that all have natural light. The building was built by Henry Hardenberg in the French Renaissance style. It's truly a beautiful space. I encourage everyone to come check it out, come visit. And after World War II, there were some changes made to the building. The school joined in with the Veterans Association to make classes more accessible for veterans coming back from the war. And so with the influx of students, the gallery had to move into the lounge space, and classes were opened up for artists such as Jackson Pollock to come and take classes. The League's had an amazing roster of artists come through its doors, both as teachers and as students, and many of whom are in attendance here. And without further ado, I will pass it on to our first curator at the League, Pamela Koob.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When the League announced plans to build a school in 1875, they also made it clear that one of their other intentions was to put together a permanent collection. And this might have seemed a little overly ambitious to some, but to the principals involved, the teachers and the students, it was a logical thing to do. Knowing your art history was an important part of any good art education. And even worse, in New York at this time, there were no museums. There were no places to go and look at art. And so it was absolutely imperative that they undertake this project. And not surprisingly, within 2 years, a newspaper article covering the League mentioned that they had already received beautiful art books and some original art for this collection. 10 years out, the president of the League, making a report to the board, happily noted that they had received an exile drawing, 13 etchings by Whistler, and 2 paintings, figure paintings by Kenyon Cox. He also mentioned that there was hope in the committee that eventually someday this is a collection that would include works by artists from Europe and the Far East. Next, please. Next slide. Good. E.D. Harnet's, an untitled drawing from 1893. I mentioned exile drawings in my earlier remarks, and this is one that has been in the collection for quite a while. It's very much, it speaks of its time, let's put it that way. And the reason for it being there is that the League asked any artist student who was planning on going abroad, and if they were going to study in one of the Parisian schools, would they please bring back one of their life studies, which is what this is, preferably signed by the instructor, indicating his approval of what you had done. We have no such signature here, but we do have Harnet's inscription saying, this is for the men's life drawing class at the Art Students League of New York. Students understood that this discipline of drawing the nude was essential training if you wanted to become an illustrator or a muralist or a portrait artist, whatever. It was the gateway to what you might achieve. And having a drawing like this could open their eyes to the standards being set in Paris. It would definitely enrich the curriculum and the collection. So I joined the League in '98 as the curator and spent my initial months surveying where this collection was stored in that large building on West 57th Street. And it was actually locked up in 2 different rooms in the basement, 2 other rooms on the first floor, and even some spaces connected to the art gallery. And I was very impressed by what I saw. It was clear that somebody had tried to take some care with these items. There were individualized slipcases for all of the paintings. The prints and drawings were still in flat files, and I hope to address that as I move forward. And there was also even the beginnings of an inventory of the collection, and I knew I would continue that work and build on it. But little did I know there was still other artwork to be found. I got a call from the maintenance men, and they said, "We think there's something up on the 5th floor that you need to see." So we went up there, and they produced a key and opened what looked like just a coat closet. And when the door swung open, we saw artist portfolios, sturdy portfolios stacked floor to ceiling. And it was quite breathtaking at the time. So we brought those items downstairs, and I went through them very carefully. I knew we couldn't afford to conserve and frame all these works. So I asked the life drawing instructors at the time if they would come and help select 5 things that we could frame and use in our studios and classes. And they did that. We settled on 5. And they were very helpful. It was very nice to be able to include the instructors in this process. And then ultimately, great to connect some of the drawings with their intended audience at the League. Next, please. Now, for some reason, that's kind of spaced out. It's a little stretched out, but I think you can see what that is. Many of the items in the portfolios up in that closet were prints by both instructors and students. And I'm going to share a quick sampling of some of the things that were found there. By the way, I should mention that the reason those portfolios had been locked away was that 2 years earlier, there'd been a major asbestos removal in the school. And I think the maintenance men were tasked with finding a safe place to store them. And somebody had just forgotten all about it until it suddenly occurred to them that this is probably something the curator should know about. So I was very grateful to the maintenance men. So we have Kenneth Hayes Miller here, a major instructor of painting at the school, addressing kind of a popular topic in the 20s, women stepping out, having a life of their own, and enjoying the new stores that were being built in New York, and doing their best to be good, conscientious consumers. Next, please. Bessie Marsh-Buer is a student of Joseph Pennell, and she also studied with John Sloan. Here she addressed a similar topic, in this case, the cosmetics department in a department store, with a bit of humor. She shows that the store owner in this point had the wherewithal to hire a pianist who probably supplied music to create a gayer atmosphere and maybe boost sales. Both of these prints offered vantage points on an ever-changing American scene, and it was really interesting to watch this as you went through these decades of prints. I pointed this out to a curator at the Payne Weber headquarters on 6th Avenue, and he said, you know, you should really make this an exhibition. He agreed. We were going through the prints. And I took him up on his offer. They helped fund an exhibition that we called A Century on Paper. This was in 2002. It was very popular with the public. We had very warm remarks left in the visitors book. And I'll give you a sampling now of some of the things that were in that exhibit. So next slide, please. Will Barnett, who we talked about before, a wonderful, storied league student and instructor, very active in the print department. This was his take on the local color in the 30s. And as I'll note later, he became very helpful when it came to recruiting donations to the permanent collection. Next, please. Also in the 30s, Martin Lewis, an Australian who came to the League to study and then also taught there late in the 40s and 50s, produced this marvelous print of a street denizen, you might say, the boss of the block. He's well known for this work. It's tinged with humor, but I can't help but feel there's a bit of insinuation and forcedness and ominousness in this image. And maybe it has something to do that he worked this in the 30s when maybe events overseas were keeping people's spirits down a bit. It's not an easy image to look at for any length of time. You don't want to run into this woman on her block. Both of these were very popular prints at Paine-Webber. Next, please. With World War II, there was an influx of prints detailing destruction overseas, blasted landscapes, broken trees, and just really grim looks that made you understand that the GIs were coming back with still much of that cataclysm on the mind. This is a unique take on that period. There's nothing like it in the League collection. And I have seen very rarely things documented. This return of a GI coming back to his home only to find that there's incidents of race violence there. So I think this is a very notable print to have. Next, please. Women artists and their output were becoming more visible in the 60s and 70s. This lithograph by Dorothy Daner is one in the collection that we're very proud of. She had studied with Jan Matulka in the 20s at the League and later took up printmaking at Atelier 17 downtown. And much of it fed her new vision that was expressed in prints like this, as well as large-scale sculptures. And we have both of those things, both of those media by her represented in the collection. Next, please. Another work by a woman in the 60s, Mavis Pusey. She'd been a student of Will Barnett's early in her life, went on to work in Europe, had quite a challenging career, and maintained a connection with Will. I have to credit him with bringing my attention to her work, which I think is fabulous, these geometric abstractions. And he contacted her and put us together, and we were very happy to receive several of these works. And next, please. Last but certainly not least, a serigraph by Masaki Noda, a Japanese artist who came and worked at the League and then went on to have a great career both in prints and then in large-scale metal sculptures, which were positioned or picked up by civic organizations as well as corporations. So he has quite a substantial career, and we're very lucky to have Echo in the collection. So thank you for listening. I look forward to the other presentations.
Jillian, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pam. That was just wonderful to see. And so I followed Pam directly, and we overlapped, and she showed me the details and the ropes about the Art Students League collection. And so much work had been done to bring the collection alive, to begin the cataloging. and the research and the exhibitions that I really wanted to continue with this strong exhibition momentum. So I was at the League from 2013 to 2018. And there are obviously very many different aspects to my role as curator. But tonight I wanted to, again, focus on exhibitions that I worked on and specifically how I hope to use these projects as a vehicle for outreach, a means of creating partnership with other institutions and organizations as a way to build awareness, further awareness for the League's gallery and collection, much following this blueprint with the partnership with Payne Weber that Pam talked about. So this partnership building was something that was always on my mind as I was formulating exhibitions. Next slide, please. So here are just a few announcement cards that offer an overview of some of the projects that I worked on. And on the lower right, we see the invitation from a show called 6 Degrees of Peggy Bacon, which was organized by the Archives of American Art and curated by Mary Savig. So coming out of the archives, originating there, it was primarily archival, and it examined the influence of 20th century printmaker and illustrator Peggy Bacon and the networks of artists that surrounded her. It included many letters and photographs and other archival pieces. So the Art Students League became the second venue for this exhibition. And I added prints and drawings from the permanent collection, as well as a few key loans. Another project was with the University of Buffalo Anderson Gallery in 2015, an exhibition called On the Front Lines. And this was an exhibition that it actually originated with the Art Students League and was examining the influence of the GI Bill on the institution, which both Pam and Esther mentioned. Among the artists that attended the League on the GI Bill were Robert Rauschenberg, Donald Judd, Michael Goldberg, and Alfred Leslie. And all of these artists were represented by my loans in the show, coming from artist estates, galleries, as well as an early work that was lent by the Rauschenberg family. And the Anderson Gallery at the University of Buffalo became a good partner for this project because their collection contained many work by these artists, and they were very excited to host and be the second venue. On the upper right is a card from a project called A Landmark Exhibition, an alliance of artists and patrons on 57th Street, and that was from 2017. And this show involved a different sort of outreach connected to celebrating the 125th anniversary of the League's French Renaissance building. As Esther mentioned, when the building opened in 1892, it was the bottom floor was completely devoted to gallery space, or almost completely devoted to gallery space, and then later became reorganized. So this exhibition was celebrating the creation of the building and sort of laying the groundwork for a opening of ground floor gallery space, building upon this history of that being an exhibition space. So this, so the exhibition set the stage for returning some of that ground floor space to gallery, and brought together photographs, artwork, and archival documents using a timeline structure. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. The final card here is Artistic Vanguard, the 1960s at the Art Students League from 2018. And this was a pop-up exhibition on the 1960s that actually coincided with a series of concerts that were taking place at Carnegie Hall. So this was in line with trying to develop programming that connected with neighboring institutions. And I love the image on the cover of this invitation. It's Charles Alston's painting, red, white, and black. Although this is an abstract expressionist work, it's from the League collection. It's not objective, but the choice of hue here and palette is a response to the civil rights movement. Next slide, please. So here are some installation photos from Artistic Vanguard. Excuse that it's a bit dark. This is a photo I took. This exhibition only ran for 1 week, which I know sounds a bit crazy for, you know, such a short run. But we had a wonderfully generous loan from the Helen Frankenthaler Foundation, a work on paper, Gloria, from 1960. And it created a lovely comparison with an early Ronnie Landfield painting, which is all the way on the left, as well as an early Bruce Dorfman mixed media painting, and on the far right, a painting by Paul Jenkins. So these pairings illustrated how League artists were manipulating paint in different but complementary ways during this period of the 1960s. Both Landfield and Dorfman were using horizontal registers or stripes, and Jenkins and Frankenthaler were using flowing paint in distinct ways to create various levels of translucency. Next slide, please. Here are just a few other catalogs from exhibitions. These are both from 2018. And the one on the right, The Masters, was a show conceived as a partnership with Herschel and Adler Gallery and 511 Gallery. For the League, this was a large survey show examining the influence of really the League's influence on American modernism across several generations. And it had the show had 3 venues, with Herschel and Adler exhibiting works before 1945. 511 Gallery showed works on paper, and then the Art Students League showed works primarily painting post 1945. On the left is a exhibition catalog related to a solo exhibition for Bruce Dorfman, which inaugurated the opening of the League's ground floor galleries that I mentioned. Now that space is routinely used as a gallery, but there had previously been a security desk and other things in that area. Next slide, please. Here's some exhibition installation photos from some of the exhibitions I've been talking about. On the upper left, a installation shot of the graphics wall from 6 Degrees of Peggy Bacon. And as I mentioned, this traced Peggy Bacon's connection with other artists, dealers, and critics of the day using the principle of 6 degrees of separation. So you moved from Bacon in the red circle to members of her sort of inner circle of artists, and then to a wider outer circle of artists, tracing this lineage of her influence. And these graphics were designed by the Smithsonian, and then the League sort of reconstructed this installation, reformulated it to fit the gallery wall. On the lower right, oh, sorry, on the lower left, you can see a installation shot from a landmark exhibition timeline. So this told the story of the League's founding and the creation of the building, which initially shared with the American Fine Arts Society. This was a rare instance when I worked with a designer on an exhibition, which was just incredibly just incredible learning experience for me, and showed me how much a designer can sort of influence and shape a show. So the designer helped to fabricate this timeline, which wrapped around the entire gallery, and to help me to place paintings, photographs, and texts together, kind of like puzzle pieces, to tell the story of the League's early years. And some of the smaller photographs that you see here, I actually remember framing them myself, like ordering the prints, the photographic prints, and then sort of pre-ordering prefabricated frames off of like Wayfair or, Amazon or someplace like that, and then just putting them together. So it's just kind of a way to stretch our budget as far as it could go. Finally, on the upper right is an installation view of the masters, with mostly abstract works, again, post 1945. On the left is a gorgeous painting by Pat Lipsky, and next to it, I believe, a painting by James Little. And as I look back on these images, I realized that I did focus a lot on abstraction in my exhibitions, not exclusively, but it was a dominant theme for me. And I think I felt that the League's history of contribution to life drawing and realism was a bit more established and well known, and I kind of wanted to illustrate that there was this development of abstraction that had a historic lineage at the League as well. Next slide, please. Here's a installation shot of the Bruce Dorfman solo exhibition that opened the ground floor galleries. And I worked with him to select a representative group of works from mixed media to collage to painting, and completely opened up this space, which was a really, really big change from the way that this entranceway had looked previously. There had been like a sculpture, a historic sculpture centered in the middle of the floor, and an entrance security desk. So it was a very dramatic process and very exciting. Next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to end with one more method of outreach, which was loaning works from the collection to other projects, other exhibitions. The most successful example of this was the loan of 2 paintings to the Georgia O'Keeffe exhibition, Living Modern, at the Brooklyn Museum. And that exhibition toured to Cleveland Museum of Art and the Norton Museum of Art. And it was curated by Wanda Korn, an amazing scholar of American modernism and of O'Keeffe's work. So to prepare for the loan of these 2 artworks, one was the portrait of Georgia O'Keeffe by Eugene Spiker, and the other one was the Dead Rabbit and Copper Pot, painted by O'Keeffe in William Merritt Chase's class. They're both from 1908. I took a look at the Spiker portrait, and I decided that I wanted to reframe it. It's somewhat unusual oval portrait, and it was framed in a decorative gold frame with this oval opening from a 1950s magazine photograph, which you can see on the bottom right, which showed the League instructors along with works from the permanent collection. I knew that it had an earlier and far simpler frame, and if you look in the photograph, you can see that the portrait is there on the right side, like hanging off a pedestal, in this kind of very simple oval, just very modest in a way, frame. And I don't know if that was the original frame, but I wanted to take it as close kind of back to the original frame as I could. So I was just thrilled to have these works go on loan. The collection is meant to be out in the world and studied. And, because the League has only one gallery space, or at that time it did, I was just really happy that these works got to be out on view. To increase access to the collection, I also was working on photographing key works in the collection and slowly bringing the collection database online. I think I completed about 100 objects, and I think I'll leave it there because I know Ksenia has done a lot of further work to build on these digitization efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther, Pam, Jillian. It's so nice to share time and company with you and everyone in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I have a bunch of slides and I promised Esther I would flip through them very quickly, so you're going to hear me like this. But if I had to summarize my curatorial outlook, I would say I was an artist-first curator. You can see here a number of images taken over the course of my 2.5 years at the League, with instructors, with students, past and present, with donors, with estates. And so these are just a sampling of the many moments that I cherish from my time at the League, which is such an incredibly special place. And as a artist first, people first curator, there's truly no better place than the League. Next, Esther, please. These studios remain truly unchanged. Of course, there have been modernizations to them, but generally, as you see here from left to right, what you see is what you get, and it's been like that since 1875. Next. The building has an aura if you have never visited, and I suspect so many of you on this call have, but perhaps it's worth another visit sometime soon because you literally walk the hallways that Jackson Pollock, Yayoi Kusama, all of these incredible artists have walked, and you feel their presence there. And again, as a curator, I don't think I will ever work in an institution as special as the Art Students League. Next, please. Where else can you see a painting? Here is the William Merritt Chase that Jillian was referring to, the instructor of Georgia O'Keeffe and Eugene Spiker. This still life by William Merritt Chase was painted in 1908. Next slide. At the same time, this still life by Georgia O'Keeffe was painted in 1908. Next slide. In the same year that this portrait of Georgia O'Keeffe was painted in 1908 by Eugene Spiker. And so together, these three works create an incredible arc of history that is not, just isolated at the League, but truly is part of our world art history. And to have these three incredible works in a single collection is truly priceless. Next slide. Here you can see the recto of the O'Keeffe, which I think is fascinating. Next slide. And a portrait of O'Keeffe herself, a photographic portrait of O'Keeffe herself next to this esteemed painting. And I guess that must be very close to the original frame that Jillian was mentioning. Next slide, please. This is what the gallery looks like on the second floor today. And now we have 4 galleries in operation, one of which is dedicated to permanent collection rotations, and then 2 of which are also dedicated to the permanent collection, as well as special exhibitions and new acquisitions. But here in the main gallery, you can sort of have a sense of what the contemporary student and instructor exhibitions look like, which are their own form of curating, akin to conversations that are developed over the course of study, whether it be a month or decades, because students come to the League in their own time and they study at their own pace. And as a curator, it's wonderful to engage with them, again, whether it's for a month or for several years, to see the arc of their career in these very special student exhibitions. Next slide, please. Of course, the galleries have not always looked this way. This is an image of the original Vanderbilt gallery on the first floor, which is no longer. Next slide, please. Students at the League have always been creative. Here you see an incredible salon hang in what I believe is now the gallery, but was once a student lounge. Next slide, please. And you can see, again, people working. It is a place that is alive. Again, as a curator, I don't think I'm ever going to be in a place that is so alive. The League, there is a heart that beats and pulses as students and instructors go in and out of the building every day, and have been doing so for nearly 150 years. Next slide. One of my favorite exhibitions I curated at the League with Esther is League of Nations, which looked at the international connections at the League, artists who were born abroad and came to the League as a refuge, as a place where they could discover themselves, where they could be free, where they can experiment. In certain cases, some of them stayed a long time, others were passing through on the way to another place. These included people like Marisol, Ai Weiwei, Zhang Hengtu, John Graham, Joseph Joseph Stella, Chaim Gross. The list goes on and on and on. The League has been in the history of so many artists. You'd be hard pressed to not name at least one. Next slide, please. I also had the honor and the pleasure of curating the incredible solo exhibition, a quasi-retrospective, if I may, even for the artist Harvey Dinnerstein, who was a longtime instructor at the League and whose estate is now under the care of the Art Students League. And this is an incredible painting, which, next slide, was not just interesting to study and research and write about, it was an incredible experience to physically install it. I am not very strong, so I was not one of those individuals hanging the work on the wall, but my colleagues at the League tirelessly worked to stretch and hang this 14-foot painting in our main gallery. Next slide, please. And you can see how beautiful it was and truly how majestic it was in this space, which has beautiful natural light coming from 57th Street. And the exhibition, which was this past June, traced various arcs in this incredible realist artist's career. Next slide. The League also has worked very hard to support its students and instructors beyond the League itself, beyond its historic 57th Street building. And so this is a quick shot of an exhibition we did, my team in the gallery this past summer in Chelsea. So giving artists who are finishing our certificate program at the League the opportunity to show their work in a public gallery space in the city's gallery district. Next slide, please. There are so many highlights from the work that we do. These include Frank Stella's final public lecture in the October before his passing. Next slides, please. A world acclaimed symposium featured in the press and including many important speakers from art institutions and art organizations in and outside of New York City. But again, next slide. It always comes back to the artists. And when, listening to Pam and Jillian talk about research, but first and foremost, access. I think when we were preparing for this talk, that was the sort of through line we had through all of our presentations, that is one of access. It is really ingrained in what the League's ethos is. Access to art education. For Louise Nevelson, when she came to the League in 1922 after the birth of her first and only child, Michael, it was a place where she rediscovered herself. It was a place where she became herself. And it was her refuge for over a decade. On and off, she attended classes at the League, which you can see some of them here in our student records, which have been fully digitized by our head of art research and archives, Stephanie Cassidy, and which are an invaluable resource for any researcher on American art. Next slide. And a highlight, one of many highlights of my time at the League, was the acquisition of the League's first and second works by Louise Nevelson, the collage at right from the 1980s. And you'll have to trust me because the image is quite light, but a figure drawing done in her time at the League. And so these two for me really represent the arc of what is one of the world's most critical and important American artists. Next slide. And so in my last minute and a half, I would be remiss not to talk about the many ways the League continues to celebrate its artists, especially as it moves into its 150th anniversary year. I had the honor and pleasure to work with the current instructor, James Little, on a series of prints. Next slide. which we produced with Powerhouse Arts in Brooklyn. These are screen prints based on Little's original paintings and works on paper. And there are 4 of them. They are available individually as well as a set. And we've been exhibiting them at the League over the last year. Next slide. And next slide. And so, you know, the League's history and reputation precedes itself. I don't need to rehash its founding here in an archival photograph of its building. Next slide. And really emphasize the fact that not much has changed physically. Okay, maybe there are certain new galleries, certain new improvements, but generally the League is truly in the same majestic state it was over nearly 150 years ago. Next slide. And so many artists have come through its doors, as you see here, some of the ones already mentioned. Next slide. And others, surprisingly even, people like Man Ray, who's best known as a photographer, a medium that the League still to this day does not teach. Next slide. And a celebration also of some of our current instructors like Jill Nathanson, or programs like our Works in Public. I'll end highlighting, next slide, please. Yet another highlight acquisition of mine that I made with the team at the League, and that for me really echoes an advancement of the League's history and vision. And that's this early work from the 1930s by Joseph Delaney, perhaps the lesser known brother of the more famous Beaufort or Buford, depending on where you're from, Delaney, who was friends with people like Georgia O'Keeffe and Gertrude Stein, and was in Paris when it was, you know, all the rage. But Joe was a lifelong Leaguer. When he came to New York in the 30s, he took a bunch of classes at the League, and then he became a life member. And until he left New York City in the late 1980s, he attended Friday Night Sketch. And he sketched and he sketched and he sketched. And at the time, he received no acclaim and no fame. And maybe arguably today, you would say he is the lesser known Delaney. But he was dedicated, and he lived and breathed and felt the League. And that is the kind of passion that the League is, you know, it inspires in so many people. And so next slide, I have a short text on Delaney that will appear in this edited volume this year for the League's 150th anniversary, edited by Stephanie Cassidy. And next slide, final slide. Feel free to pick up your phones and click this QR code to learn more about what the League is doing this year. I would say it's always a good year to learn about the League, but this year of all years is a very special year, and it's wonderful to be able to honor this very important, this critical institution to American history, American art, and again, frankly, world history and world art. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion with my colleagues and also from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Every presentation's been really, really good, and I learned a lot. So I'm opening up the floor. If anyone has questions, if they don't, I go first with the question.
Sure, please.
Yeah.
To your
Okay.
question.
So it's really wonderful to learn about the collection and the artists and students. And can you, or does any one of you know a little bit about the curriculum structure, how it worked, you know, the dynamics between the students and instructors and so forth?
Yeah, so the classes are done in the French Atelier style, which means that you work in a studio setting with other students, with an instructor there present who, at least today, they're in a number of times during the week. And if they're not there, they have a monitor who's a highly skilled student that they've selected to instruct. And your instructor will be there, and it's more casual. You're working on your own, at your own pace, on your own project. If it's how you want to draw and how you want to learn, and the instructor, depending on who you choose to take classes with, will come and interact with you. It's a very intimate setting. I know I've taken classes, and it's really amazing to take part. And what's great about the league is that since it's a non-certificate, non-degree granting, but certificate granting institution, you can come for a month, you could come for 2 months, 10 months, 10 years, kind of choose how you want to learn and who you want to learn with.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Two. Actually, the first image that you showed was very interesting to me from 1875. The studio was full of women. At the beginning of the history of the Art Students League, I'm assuming that women were included immediately. There was no prejudice against a woman couldn't study, as in Paris, women were not permitted. The second question I'm just curious about is art history taught there in the kind of lecture program or as part of the studio program?
So I'll just answer the question about art history. We try to encompass that within our public programs. That's really to transfer art history education. There are also classes that go on gallery walks or at the Met, but it's more focused on the studio style classes. Ksenia or Pam, I don't know if you guys want to speak to women at the league. I know you've both been very passionate about it.
I can actually jump in on the women question. So yes, women were involved in the founding of the Art Students League as it broke away from the National Academy of Design. So they actually had some say in the writing of the Constitution, which I believe, and Pam, maybe you can remember and tell me if I'm right, but I believe it like provided for women's life classes, dedicated women's life classes. So that was actually a huge deal, as you point out. Like in many cases, women had a really hard time getting access to life drawing classes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that was so important. Like it was essential at that point to have access because you needed that to move forward and move up if you were going to be a professional.
Right.
It was even to the point where in the league's constitution, there's a provision which today might seem archaic, but at the time was really quite revolutionary, that dictated that there had to be a female board member and a male board member in order so that this female students were always represented. So
Right.
it's really intrinsic to the institution. We got a question earlier in the chat, which I'll bring up now. The question was, what is a curator looking for in an artwork for inclusion in the collection? Who would like to take that away? Ksenia?
Well, I'll jump in first because I was very active when it came to acquisitions. I think I acquire. I mean, Esther, do correct me if you know an exact number. I feel like close to 200 works in 2.5 years. So, majority, almost exclusively, those were on donation, and some of them were in larger groups of works. And so I would say some of the top criteria would be, well, first and foremost, the number one mandate is a collection mandate is that the artist went to the league. So went to the league, studied at, taught at the league, has some verifiable league connection. Whether or not there were works predating this most recent collection policy from sort of the original years that Pam was referring to of artists, whether they are had associations with the league, direct or indirect, is another story. But kind of in the contemporary understanding, the person had to have a connection, has to have a connection to the league. Then I think, you know, each curator can very easily identify their like personal collecting priorities. I think for me, mine were international artists, women artists, artists of color, as well as approaches and processes that maybe are underrepresented in the collection, whether that's something that's like a material process or material or a technique. So I think that comes from study of the collection and sort of an understanding of, you know, really a response to contemporary times. Of course, then there's all the logistical and sort of conservation matters. I think, you know, we're looking, you know, once we get down to the nitty gritty of it, we're also looking for good works, great works, even if possible, in good or excellent condition. Acquiring a work is a commitment on the part of an institution. for a long period of time, if not perpetuity. So it does come with a responsibility, and one that I took very seriously.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
May I ask, and I don't know if it's directly relevant to the subject matter of tonight's program, but I've taken a bunch of courses, mostly in sculpture at the League. I'm not currently enrolled, but I'm still a member. And I've seen work in the studio, sculpture, and also in painting classes, a really, really superb work by some very talented people. And it's always bothered me that, especially seeing some of these student shows, that a lot of the people have no conception of how to sell their work, how to market their work, how to establish, I hate to say a reputation, but for lack of a better description. I had asked this question once, I think at one of the meetings at the building. Has the League ever made an attempt to offer a course or a series of sessions to members on how to promote their own work?
11 a.m. I think it's 7 p.m. weekdays right here on 89.
Would anyone like to take this question? Or
As a dealer for the last 40 years, I can tell you that as much as I adore, respect, and worship artists, the gene that's missing is promotion. I think it's the hardest thing for an artist to step forward and saying, buy this, show me, I
Right.
want this. They are running in the other direction. Please, I'd rather spend 10 hours in private in my studio making something. Michael, please bring somebody by. Michael, can you tell me what, it's really not a skill that I think most artists have. And I think that it's a hard job. It's a tedious job. There's nothing worse than having collectors come or someone coming to your studio, whether it's a critic or a curator, and they look and go, well, that's nice. And then they turn around and walk home.
Right.
It's sort of like being rejected while you're having a date where they sort of get up and go to the bathroom and they never come back to the table. I think it's a very, very difficult thing. There's skills that you can learn. I think that the easiest is to mentor with another artist who has kind of a career that's moving along and just talk to them and see how they did it. Where did they meet? What did they learn from? There's a sculptor. I'm living upstate now. There's a sculptor who I met about 6 months ago. I think the work is fantastic. He has absolutely no ability to promote it. He doesn't. I mean, it's just shocking to me that he just hasn't done more things publicly because I think the work is really good.
It's not Anthony Riotto, is it?
I'm sorry?
Anthony Riotto?
No. But anyway, I do think it's a very hard thing. And, whether the League will offer a class or a course on,
There's a professional development course.
There is. Well,
yeah.
That's a terrible term for it, by the way. Professional development always sounds like, it's sort of I don't know. It just doesn't sound like, the hardcore, how do I get ahead? How do I make a career out of this? How do I pay the rent making my art? That's basically what you want to do.
Right. How do I market myself? I'm not talking
Yeah, how
about
do you market yourself and who do I talk
Right.
to and where do I start? And,
I mean, I've seen some fantastic work in the galleries during the student shows.
Yeah.
Professional quality work.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people know how to do anything with it. They
I
don't
think,
do it.
again, it's not a natural skill. And, I went to art school for a year, hated it so much, I couldn't stand it. And yet the thing that I loved was writing about it, talking about it, and ultimately selling it. I could do that in my sleep. But when it came to actually sitting in the studio, and I just made a mess. So that was a decision. And I think, it's just a skill. I had a question apropos the collection in general. When you were showing the images of the various artists, I noticed that there was a Jackson Pollock. Is there a Pollock in the collection? Is there a David Smith?
Unfortunately, there's no Pollock in the collection yet.
That's
Hopefully
a
we
shame.
be able to acquire one.
That's a sin. And what about David Smith?
No.
David Smith, I don't
there
believe
is a Tony Smith.
there is a
Yeah, great.
I acquired a Tony Smith in 2022.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Sure. David, no.
Okay. All right. And I'm just wondering, as the League itself, I mean, should you be making a pronouncement out to the public? I mean, there are collectors. I mean, this would be an extraordinary place to donate a work and get it publicly. I mean, I would assume that if a Jackson Pollock showed up at your doorstep, you'd probably want to give it some prominence.
Of
So
course, of course.
Yes, we'll consider this a public pronouncement. I mean, in fact, it's this kind of the relationships that the league builds are so very pivotal to its success. And
right.
I think great strides have been made, over these years from Pam
Right.
through Jillian and up to the present. And it is really there's great opportunity here. And again, no place truly more exciting than the league.
Yeah, well, I
Just,
last, I'll shut up in a second. My first job was on 57th Street and literally walked by the league on the way to work and on the way home for 4.5 years and looked in the windows. And for some bizarre reason, I never walked in the door.
That's not the first time we've heard that. I like to joke that
But
even
my
though it's
next
so
trip to
well
New
known
York,
in
I'm
the arts.
definitely coming by. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
have a
question.
Oh,
Yes, please.
Someone earlier in a presentation mentioned the digitization of the records so are those the attendance records of who was in what class?
Yeah,
What's
they're
included?
the student records. So, when you enrolled, before 1990, you had handwritten cards with your personal information and each class and how much you paid for that class, whether you also paid for a locker or you paid for membership or if you were a life member. Those cards ceased in 1990 and everything went fully
Now,
digital
how far back do those cards go?
to
Because
1875.
they do, yeah,
Wow.
because
Amazing.
I have work by an American woman artist named Clara Davidson, and a few of her drawings say they mention a sketch class,
Mhm.
and I think they were probably done at the Art Students League. So
Cool.
I'm an experienced researcher. Hi, Michael, you know
Hi,
that.
Ronnie.
Yeah. Old hand at all this. What's involved in making an appointment to use the records or what? They're not online, right?
They are private as they do contain personal information.
Uh-huh.
They can be requested. I won't be so bold as to offer anyone's email. I'll defer to Esther on how she wants to handle any of those
Oh,
requests.
sure.
Yes,
Okay.
you could certainly, if you guys ever have questions, you
I
guys
have
reach out to me.
two questions related to records.
Mhm.
Artist Talk on Art has done two panels on artists on the GI Bill that went to Paris. So those are, two different groupings of over the years. I'm curious whether you actually have records to identify people that were on the GI Bill during that same period. So you do have records of that?
I believe we do. We also have incredible records on scholarships that people received. So for example, Joyce Pensado, we found that she had a scholarship to go study abroad. There are all these amazing records at the League that should you ever have research questions, you could always
Right.
reach out to me or to our archivist.
And then the second part of this is the WPA.
Mhm.
So many artists all over the country, but certainly in the New York area, were in different projects of the WPA, either the poster project, the easel project, the various projects. Was there a role on the part of the Art Students League? Was there some interaction between the Art Students League and the WPA, or for that matter, the Artists Union?
I'm not sure. Pam, Jillian, do you guys know how closely the
I
League was
don't.
in
As,
connecting people to WPA?
as far as I know, there was no like formal relationship between the Art Students League and the WPA. In terms of like the administration of the WPA art project. Certainly, like there was a huge overlap of artists involved with the Art
Certainly.
Students League and who were engaged with the WPA. So I mean, maybe informally there was probably a lot of crossover, and it probably that experience probably informed like the networks in terms of like the relationship between students and their connection to the league, because the league was like a meeting place, right? I mean, so I think there was crossover, but I don't know of like any administrative,
Uh-huh.
you know, The administrator in New York, I think, was Juliana Force of the Whitney. And yeah.
Because there, you know, for example, there was a period where the Art Students League had its summer school, summer activities in Woodstock. And there was also in Woodstock, or overlaying Woodstock, a number of WPA people. So, you know, I always find it very incestuous how interconnected so much of this is in art history.
Yeah, and I think at that moment too, like the league is a really central player. It's a much like smaller art world at that point than like what we know today. And yeah, certainly Woodstock was a huge center. You know, later Provincetown, a little bit later Provincetown, you know, so those networks really overlap in terms of like artists, you know, studying with Hoffman in Provincetown and then, you know, also studying with him at there's just a lot of crossover. Yeah.
And I,
Did Hoffman ever teach at the league? There's something
He
on
did. I believe
Yes.
he did. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
wow.
Briefly.
But during the war, was the league kind of a safe way, was a safety net for a lot of artists who were leaving Europe?
Yes.
Was there a policy to sort of bring people, because there's
That's
in Paris right
exactly
now,
my
there's a
question.
yeah, sorry.
For example,
No, it's
George
exactly my
Grosz.
question.
George Grosz was brought over to teach from Germany, and there are a number of others, many of whom were in the exhibition that Ksenia mentioned, A League of Nations. So you have Chaim Gross also found solace at the League. And there was a whole group of friends who ended up meeting at the League and stayed lifelong friends after meeting there.
Right. Okay.
I placed some links in the chat. So I linked to the current online collection on the League's website, which is also accessible if you go to the League's main website. And on that page, publicly accessible, is the contact of the League's registrar, Tiffany Miller. So I'm happy to volunteer her email address. She can help with any questions related to artworks in the collection, and she can also make direct any requests you might have for student records. And lastly, I also included a link to Linea, which is the journal Esther mentioned at the top of the call. It's been, I believe it celebrated its 25th anniversary this year, and it's edited by the League's head of research and archives, Stephanie Cassidy, who is a walking encyclopedia. I mean, if you think we could answer all questions, then you know, you haven't met Stephanie. And that is a very active online publication. The most recent publication text on that website was just published in January. So you can read more about many of the League artists and the works in the collection on that website as well.
I believe we have time for a couple more questions if anyone has. If not, I can put a couple in there.
Well, I have a question. I mean, Michael's asked my war question, so I have to ask another different one. So, so I did read a little bit about your background and history. So there is a publication branch. So when did that start? And is it just online or?
Can you repeat your question?
Oh, the publication, I read that there is a publication related to art and topics on art. So can you tell me a little bit about this publication, basically?
So that is the one that Ksenia just linked in, Linnea. And our archivist invites in scholars and instructors and students to write about their experiences, exhibitions they've gone to, as well as historical articles. There's some great ones. There's a really fascinating one about Spiker and Georgia O'Keeffe and how that portrait came about. There are some really, really fascinating articles on there. So that's linked in the chat, and we really encourage everyone to go check it out.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Babs Reingold. I'm an artist, and I was just wondering, is the League doing anything, speaking of artists and promotion and getting your work out there and figuring out those ways to deal in the world and sell your work? Are they doing any courses that are focused around social media and how you use the social media as a tool? I myself have also held, I was an art director and I made presentations and did all that sort of thing to make money to subsidize my work. But so I know how to approach people and do that. And I do use social media, and it has gained me a lot of connections. I mean, the whole art world is really just about making connections. And are they doing something in the course where you're saying they're doing something with promotion? Are they using social media in that respect?
So there isn't a particular social media workshop or class at this moment. There are classes on how to photograph your work and how to present it in that way. But it is something that I could bring up, and who knows, but at this time, that's not something that's being offered.
Get into the 21st century. That's all I can say. Okay.
Yes. All right. Do we have any other questions? See in the chat. All right, so I'm going to pose a couple more, if that's all right with anyone. Please feel free if you guys think of questions. So Ksenia, you sort of talked about one of the pieces that was your favorite in the collection, and I know it's sort of a prosaic question a little bit, but Jillian, Pam, Ksenia, I'd love to hear more about if there are any unique finds, favorite pieces, or interesting stories you could share with us about your time at the League.
I defer to Pam and Jillian first. I'm happy to.
Well,
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay, mine's quite quick. Just to provide a little more on that Spiker portrait of O'Keeffe, because we keep kind of coming back to it. When they did open it to take the frame out and change the frame, it was surprising to me to see that Spiker had actually taken the square canvas and like wrapped it around an oval board and kind of tacked it down. So it was just a really surprising find. And I don't know, I'm assuming that it was the artist that did that, but I'm not 100% sure. And it was just, I don't know, a shock to me. I was surprised to find that.
I can understand that.
I mean, you never sort of know what you're going to find, right? When you kind of delve into something. And
Right.
yeah.
That's so true.
I know he spent a lot of energy convincing her to pose for him. There's that story that they tell about him saying to her, I don't know why you won't pose for me. I have a brilliant career ahead of me as a portrait artist. And unfortunately, being a woman, you're just probably going to end up teaching art in some school. We all know how that turned out. So I don't know how much value he placed even on, that she finally did sit for him and there was that canvas, but it doesn't surprise me that he was kind of cavalier in handling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I think something that might also be interesting for people to hear about is, do you have different considerations when you're curating the collection shows versus when you're curating the student exhibitions?
I can't say that. I know the few shows that I organized for the loan exhibits that I organized borrowing from dealers in town, I felt a real freedom there to pick and choose. I mean, there's no censorship going on, and that was exhilarating. I think if you were curating the instructor show, you had to be very careful to appear to be not biased at all, not favoring one over another. I mean, I heard them talking about, oh, my painting wasn't hung by itself, it was hung with another painting. So you realized you were dealing with some tender feelings there, and you did have to try to respect that to a point.
Is there a big exhibition on the books now for the future, 2 or 3 years from now from the League?
Even this coming May, we hope you'll all come. We have our 150th anniversary exhibition, which will take place in all 4 of the League's galleries. So it'll be our largest scale exhibition in our building. Ksenia and I are hard at work on it. We met today to finalize some of our collection checklist.
When
So
is
we
that
hope
opening?
you'll all come in and
When does
attend.
that
May
open?
29th.
May 29th.
29?
May 29th. Please do come and check it out.
Yes. I mean, I think student shows and curated exhibitions, I mean, it's sort of like apples and oranges, I think, but that's not to say that the student shows are not excellent and don't include amazing work, as was pointed out by one of the audience members here tonight, that there are often so many high quality works in student exhibitions. It's almost mind-blowing how these artists are not in more exhibitions or represented by galleries and selling their work. It's the timelines, the student salons which are happening currently right now at the League are not curated and they are put together by the classes, but there are higher level student shows like the final project exhibition of students graduating from the certificate program, grant and merit winners, and juried selection winners. I mean, those have, still a very tight turnaround, and to build out thematic or thesis-based arguments in those shows it's difficult, if not impossible, because of the range of work. And it's truly not the purpose of those shows. I think if I could speak for Esther and myself, as we co-curated, or Esther even solo curated some of them over the last 2.5 years, we're trying to put the work in the best possible setting, in the best possible light, so that the work could shine. We save our theses and our research for the curated exhibitions or for the collection rotations, which over the last 2.5 years, there's been a real concerted effort to really double down on highlighting and showing as much of the collection, because there are over 2,600 works in the collection, and they are, unfortunately, not on view often enough, despite all efforts.
So in other words, would you say the curatorial method is more sort of work driven rather than, like you mentioned about, the research and your other methods of curatorial process? Would it be, in this case, work driven, you say?
I think so, but I think every curator has their own vision. I mean, Jillian and Pam, I'm sure you can chime in. Every curator has their own sort of, some maybe more interested in biography, some more interested in a certain thematic. I will say there was a question that just came in on the chat about, like, are you telling the artist to paint or sculpt? I personally have never commissioned anything at the League. And even in the process of working on an artist commission, which I have done in other contexts before, I'm never telling the artist to do anything, right? I am the, the wind beneath the artist's wings to see their vision through. I mean, yes, there could be dialogue, and yes, there could be feedback, but nothing is ever sort of done on demand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think most curators would say would be an overreach of the curator to tell an artist, at least I feel that way, to tell an artist what to do in that way. I mean, sometimes there are limitations as to like what is possible in a space, so you have to kind of, collaborate and come to an answer that works for that situation. Like there are just limitations, like, the weight a floor can hold, or the height of a ceiling, or just in the case of the League, just the number of other artworks in the exhibition. Because one challenge that I had with many of the student shows was just, negotiating the space and allowing everyone to kind of have equal, equal space, while at the same time allowing them to show what they most wanted to put forward. So I always found it to be like a dialogue between the curator and the artist. But sometimes there are constraints that are like difficult and you have to do the best you can.
Right.
I
But I
believe
think
time for one last question.
could I just continue that conversation about curatorial work? So in this process, then I guess a lot of you also have helped the students to discover more than what they thought they were doing. I mean, in some ways, you're also helping them opening up, their creative possibilities and potentials, would you say?
That would be my goal. Like I would, if that would, I would feel I'd done a I would feel good about a project if like we both came out having learned something and like that this was as you say, like an opening up where like, the artist took something away, especially for the students who are as came up before, like, trying to sometimes make this leap between being student and being, in the professional art world. And like we do have a number of recent success stories over the past 5 to 10 years of, artists that came up through these programs and have built successful careers in the art world.
I think that's something that's very unique at the League, these opportunities to have student exhibitions, even the student salons, which are more, as Ksenia said, self-hung, but these chances to exhibit and show their work and learn how to be a part of an exhibition. So, for example, when we bring in a student for a grant and merit show, they're asked to provide a bio, they're asked to provide their links and put themselves forward and frame their works, know how to present your work, how to deliver your work, how to wrap it and pack it. And so there are all these like steps to try and teach people kind of the next step that they would have to take from student to artist in the art world.
Yeah, never enough hours in the day.
I think there's a question he's raising his hand.
Oh, yes, please, Dan.
Hi, I just wanted to insert one statement. There are many of us at the Art Students League, and some of my fellow students are here tonight. We're retired, and we come to the Art Students League as a retirement project. And this is a wonderful evening. Thank you, Michael, for making this possible. Notice a painting over on my right shoulder here. That's available for purchase, by the way.
Very good.
But that's not why I'm there. I'm also there meeting wonderful people. I just adore many of the people I've met there, and they've become friends. And that's just wonderful. I'm not interested in commerce at all. I've spent my life in commerce, and as a retired person, I want to be free of that. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks, Dan. I mean, I'll say something just kind of maybe polemical. I don't know. We'll see. We have 5 minutes, almost 5 minutes to unpack it. But I mean, I totally hear these comments and this feedback about, supporting artists in their quest to commercialize or to sell their work, or supporting artists in their quest to be present on social media. And I think in and of themselves, all of those endeavors are perhaps even critical to functioning on this planet. But is that the point of the League? I mean, the League provides a foundational art education, in many cases more foundational than most art schools. People come to the League, all ages, all shapes, all sizes, all backgrounds, at all stages of their lives and their careers in and outside of the art world. We have MFA grads who come back, who come to the League to learn color theory because all they learned in art school was conceptual art. We have, as Dan mentioned, people who are retired who may or may not have had any artistic background coming and doing their thing. So I almost feel, again, so here's the polemical statement, like, is it should the League even be providing any of that? Or should the League really be focused on giving that space, giving that tuition, giving that skill, and then letting that person to decide what they want to do with it. And maybe that means they have to go outside the league to do that, but at least they're leaving the league with something incredibly special and incredibly, important.
Good answer. Good. And I
I don't know
also
if it's
should
an
say,
answer.
no,
It's
it
sort of
really is
a-
a good answer. What? No, no.
I don't know if it's an answer. I appreciate you thinking it an answer, but I wonder if it's like a little kind of hot take.
Well, I'm going to compare it to medical school. I have a family of doctors in my family. I think the one thing that I was impressed at the end was really a class on dealing with patients. Really dealing with the day-to-day, the hardcore realities of a patient, being given information. How is the patient going to deal with it? How is the family going to deal with it? Those are very practical things. You're not learning about the biology of a system or the chemical makeup of a medicine or what have you. But and I think that, to my mind, that an opportunity, someone at the league, whether they're retired, whether they're young, whether they're old, whatever they are, to have a chance to see what it would be, what the possibility are, what could be provided to go that next step to get involved in a professional art world. I don't think it would be a terrible thing for the league to provide. I don't know if you do, or you said you had a professional classes, but I think it's an important aspect of the work. And you may decide, what, I don't want it to go that route. I'm just going to make my work and live my life. And if I get discovered, fantastic. Or if I don't get discovered, that's also quite good. But
Can I
I think
insert something?
I think as a profession, I think it's an important thing to provide.
I've given some presentations where you go and you're doing your talk, and it was interesting to me because when you go to a school, like I was in a show at the Rutgers, and you go and a lot of the students, especially the undergrads, the first thing is like, how are you making a living? How did you become successful? How did you do that? It's like that was, and they come alive, and the gazillion questions go flying because it's the one thing that they never seem to get when they're in the schools. And so they're asking a person who's made it of sorts, and like, how did you do it? They all want to know that secret.
The secret of success is to watch many artist talk on art panels.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
May I insert something here? When I was in college,
Bravo, very good.
when I was in college, I was an art major for about a year. And I looked around the studio and I said, I'm probably better at some things than the average student, but compared to these colleagues, these students in the art class, they were far better than me. And I said to myself, if they're going to struggle to make a living, what am I doing here?
Right.
I became more practical, and I switched to something more career oriented where I could support myself and a family. And then later, gradually, more and more, especially now in retirement, I'm pursuing my art interests, sculpture, photography, ceramics, as a hobby. But I see, in taking several classes at the league, I see some people who are on scholarship, who are professional artists, and in every way except one, and that is they don't make enough money to support themselves selling their art. And most of them have other jobs. And that always upset me in any of the arts, whether you're a dancer or a musician or a fine artist. It's always difficult making a living. And I'm not suggesting that the Art Students League create a department that help artists market themselves, but I think it would be helpful maybe once a year, there is a short course, 2 or 3 sessions, or maybe even less frequently, to give artists, serious artists, or maybe even hobbyists, an opportunity to understand how they might be able to market themselves. I think it would be a very practical, helpful solution to many people, especially the artists at the league who do want to do this as a career.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
I believe we're at time, but
Yeah.
please do reach out to us at the league if you have any questions about what we covered today. We'd be happy to answer more questions.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for attending and very nice, wonderful questions. And once again, all the events are recorded, and for previous events, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And our next event will be on March 3rd, and visit our website for details. And thank you. And I hope you all keep in touch and continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
It was
Thank
great.
you so
everybody.
much.
Great night.